to manage to sustain the power grid for about 421 days or so, which is over a year. And then all of a sudden, we hear of another grid collapse, which was, what happened twice, in 6 hours, and many people are wondering how. How is it that we continuously hear of, national grid collapse in this country? Is it the same thing that other people in other countries experience, or is it peculiar to Nigeria? We'll seek to find out, all of these, try to understand what it is that's going on with the power sector, especially with the Transmission Company of Nigeria, the TCN, which was created in 2006 or so, licensed in 2006. The only government owned power, what do you call it now? The only government owned aspect of the power distribution, generation, and all. That's the only one that the federal government owns right now. You'd recall that the generation was privatized, distribution was privatized, but the federal government held on to transmission. Would understand what it means, what all of these means for us this morning, because I've heard a lot of people ask questions as to, look, what is this with national grid collapse? Nigeria goes to, we say we have 5,000 capacity, what do you call it? Megawatts on the grid. Some days you hear, oh, it has collapsed to 1,000. And currently we hear that we have lost a lot of capacity on the grid, losing about 2,000 or so megawatts. What does all of these mean, and how can we end grid collapses? My guest this morning is one who understands it and would be sharing with us all of most of his knowledge on the sector. He is Bode Fadipe. Most of you are very familiar with him. Bode Fadipe is the CEO, Sage Consulting and Communications. He is a legal practitioner and communications specialist with focus on power sector analysis, advocacy, and advisory. They're also partners to electricity market participants and end users. He's joining us in this conversation this morning. It's going to be an interesting one, and one that would enlighten you so that you understand what's going on with the power sector. Good morning, Mr. Fadipe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Well, let's begin this conversation. Where do we start from? Let's start off by talking about, the greed and the collapses that we've witnessed in the past. I'm wondering, I'm one of those people who wonders what it means for, national grid to collapse. What does it mean? Is it like my generator getting spoiled just in the middle of generating power for me, and we're unable to fix that as quick as possible? And even while we're fixing it, it continues to collapse. What does this all mean? And how were we able to sustain the system for over a year? Coming from 2022 until we had the last collapse last month or so, where that threw Nigeria into darkness. How does this all work? Help us, walk us through this whole system collapse or grid collapse thing.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think your station is doing so wonderfully well with this kind of public service, and I'm sure that other stations will also take advantage of what you are doing to learn from you and ventilate and give opportunity for such a major utility to ventilate some of these views. Now, when you talk about grid collapse, I think the first thing we need to understand is that the power sector operates on a tripod. And what does that mean? It operates on three legs. The generation is one of the legs, the transmission is one of the legs, and then the distribution is one of the legs. Now, for transmission, which is our main focus, transmission is a static facility. It has no mechanical energy. It has no, in very simple terms, it has no moving parts. What you just find is network of lines, transformers, and other equipment used in managing the grid. So what does that mean? It means, in terms of grid collapse, it means that any of the three arms, grid collapse can be as a result of activity from any of the three legs of the power sector. It could come from generation, it could come from transmission, it could come from distribution. Now, talking about the last one that just occurred, from a valuable fact which is known to the public, the first one happened as a result of interference, fire interference on the Kainji Jeba 330 kV line. That's the highest voltage in this country. And then the second one occurred when we had problem with the Brenin Kebbi transmission station, which is also a 330 station. Now, incidentally, those two stations feed Niger Republic. So there is the feeling that, okay, is there anything extraordinary, especially because of the fact that for over 400 days, precisely 421 days, transmission was able to keep the grid. What did they do to keep the grid to make sure that the grid did not collapse? I mean, it was unprecedented for the grid to last for that long, since privatization especially. It was an unprecedented experience. So now I have a situation where suddenly, after we have kept the grid for 421 days, then there will be a collapse. People began to ask. As a matter of fact, even at the ministerial level, the minister also had this hunch. The security service, can you look into the possibility of some sabotage? So, very clearly what we can say is that investigations are being carried out to find out exactly what led to that collapse. But until then, we can only put it within the framework of conjecture. But in terms of grid collapse, what are the causes? It could be a sudden drop of a major load. It could come from distribution side where there is a sudden drop of major load. You will see that during the rainy season, a lot of load is lost at the distribution end, and maybe from the generation side too. It could be that one turbine is down, one station goes down for one reason or the other. That could also lead to grid collapse. There could be a tripping on a transmission line as well, which could lead to a grid collapse. But one thing that is very clear is that when it comes to grid collapse, is that it covers a substantial part of the country or the entire country itself. Those local faults that you see around, they don't amount, you cannot call them grid collapse, because they are majorly cottage supply points. In other words, they are not substantial enough. I mean, within your area or within your office area, if there's a lot of power supply in that area, even if it's affecting more than your area, and even if it's affecting, say, Gariki, for those of us who are in Abuja, it's affecting Gariki, it's affecting Asokoro, it's affecting Mitama, it does not amount to grid collapse. No, that's not grid collapse. Grid collapse must be something that affects all a substantial part of the country or the entire country itself. So that's exactly what it is when you talk about grid collapse and what are the likely causes of grid collapse. Like I said, the transmission, the power sector is a tripod. There's the generation, there's the transmission, and there's the distribution. But this morning we're looking at our focus, like you said, is on the transmission station. And for the last grid collapse, there is the likelihood of some kind of human intervention. Why that will be is what I cannot say, because I don't have. That's a security information that you don't have access to. But suffice to say that that's a possibility, and given the fact that that's a possibility, it's very important for Nigerians to become more conscious, because electricity is a critical asset, or power infrastructure is a critical asset that we must keep. And we must guide jealously and make sure that it is seriously protected by all, not just government officials alone by way of security apparatus, but even individuals. When you say something, you must be able to say something. Thank you.
Well said. Well said. Because I mean, if power is a national asset, we need to protect it. Now, let's talk about the transmission aspect of all, of power. You just mentioned the tripod, and for those of us who are, you're the expert. Those of us who are not experts in this field, we're wondering what is it that we hear today that transmission has been upped to about 7,000, and yet we are unable to distribute all of it. Generation has gone up to 14,000. Just yesterday we saw reports of generation capacity or so going up to, or the grid capacity going up to 14,000 megawatts, but yet Nigerians deal with power outages. What is the problem with, and you hear people say, oh, the problem is not with generation. We have enough, we're able to generate enough electricity to service Nigerians. The problem is with transmission. Some others say, oh, no, it's not with transmission, it's with distribution. Distribution does not have the capacity to distribute what is transmitted to it. Help us understand this whole back and forth and argument as against the capacity of electricity that we generate, and why Nigerians continue to experience outages.
Now, thank you for that question. You see, the thing with electricity is that currently there is very minimal opportunity for storage, if there is any at all. Maybe at the level of alternative power supply like solar, you use battery to store at a very minimal level. But at the level at which otherwise electricity is consumed as it is generated. So, and that technically means that unless the person that is consuming is available to consume, or it is only the quantity that the person that is consuming is ready to consume, that you can generate at any point in time. If the capacity to consume is 5 megawatts, that is what will be available for the transmission to carry to the consumer. The transmission is like a wheeler, it's like a transporter. The generation will tell the transmission, I have 5 megawatts. The transmission will carry that megawatt to the distribution man, who is the one that is consuming. So if at the end of the value chain, the distribution man can take 10,000 megawatts, then you want to now interrogate the generation, the transmission, what can they carry? Yes, I also read of the story that generation has 14,000 capacity. Is different from availability. We need to clarify that point. There are machines that can do up to 14,000. Now, as at the last simulation that was done, transmission can take up to 8,000 megawatts. But again, at the end of the road, can distribution take everything at once? So, if distribution is able to take everything at once, then we can have that capacity that we have can be utilized, that capacity that we have at generation and transmission can be utilized. But if not, then it's impossible for us to utilize the capacity at the two other ends of the tripod. So majorly, it is what can be consumed that determines what is made available at generation and what is put on the wheel to transport to the distribution end. So that's the way it works. Otherwise, if generation brings up more than what distribution can take at any point in time, there will be over frequency. And when there is over frequency, it has effect on the machines. Remember that the generators have machines, they have moving parts, unlike transmission and distribution. So, and if there is a frequency above the regulated frequency, Nigeria's regulated frequency is 50 hertz. I'm saying too much technical things, but just to let us understand it. Nigeria is just like a vehicle made to run at only 50 kilometers per hour. If it goes up, there is a speed limit by road safety regulation. I think you can't do more than 100 or 120. The moment you start moving above that, your vehicle that is regulated will start blinking, to start giving some sound, that you have exceeded the speed limit. The same way in the generation, once the regulated frequency is above 50 Hz, which is our regulated frequency, the machines will begin to vibrate because load is not being taken. And once it is below that 50 Hz, it will begin to move sluggishly until it grinds to a halt. Now, those two activities, they affect the machine set. That is why what is consumed must be equal to what is generated, and what is generated must be equal to what is consumed. The man at the middle, his own is obedience. Take what is generated and carry to what is to be consumed. I don't know whether I have made the point clear.
Yes, we're trying to understand that. So we can understand, that explanation. But let's also look at how we were able to sustain the national grid for that long without it breaking down. I recall that in 2022 or so, we had about 7 grid collapses, and people were wondering, is the grid now a generator, or that just goes off at any time? So how were we able to manage the grid for that long until this last one, which experts like you suspect to be a sabotage?
Yes. Now, I think basically we must give it to transmission. I mean, I know clearly that at least 26 projects have been executed between 2020 and date, and so many other ones are going on. I mean, for instance, I can tell you for free that in Abuja alone, you have 19 projects that have been slated for execution in Abuja alone, and Abuja is a strategic area too. In Lagos itself, you have about 30 projects that have been slated to improve the network. In Abuja region, like I said, you have at least 19. In Kano region, for instance, you have about 19 as well. In Enugu region, covering the southeast, you have about 28 projects. So they are scattered all over the country like that. In Bauchi, for instance, what figure do we have? We have about 15 projects that have been scattered all over. In Kaduna as well, all over the country, projects have been earmarked and they are ongoing. So, coming back to your question, what did transmission do to ensure that they were able to sustain the grid for 421 days? Simple. Execution of projects at optimal level, ensuring that all the projects that have been set up. As a matter of fact, as I speak to you, transmission has a 20-year development plan that is ongoing. What we just need is to make sure that from administration to administration, there is adherence to that plan. That plan is reviewed in line with current development, so that at the end of the day, I mean, for instance, one of the major current developments is the new Power Sector Act, which allows state government to be players in the sector. They can now generate, they can now transmit, they can now distribute. But policy experts are saying, and observers are also advising that, okay, rather than jump to the highest voltage level as a state, you don't have the funds. Why don't you start from maybe 11 kV or 3 kV, which is majorly distribution voltage, and then use the existing transmission infrastructure to transport your energy to any point that you need the energy to be there. So that means that transmission has to strengthen its network in expectation of more load coming into the grid within the geographical area of each state. So you have 36 states. If they are going to develop at the same time, which is an impossibility anyway, but at least you know that potentially there are new 36 players in the market. And these 36 players, some of them will require transmission facilities. So you can then understand why transmission is already having a 20-year development plan, and you can understand why transmission is running almost faster, as fast as it ought to do, in order to be sure that it is prepared to accommodate this new development. So again, we emphasizing the point that the question that you have raised. What did they do? Like I said, nothing other than ensuring that projects that have been slated for execution are executed. And I just gave you 26 of them I just told you that 26 of such projects have been completed and many more are going on. For instance, in Alagbo in Lagos and in Lekki, they have 2x300 MVA transformers. Those are huge transformers that you don't see around easily unless you go to a place like Katambi to go and see the facilities there. That's the kind of place where you can. Otherwise, these are in Lekki, you have the same thing. And such projects are scattered all over the country. Once we continue to invest in the power sector, I can assure you, and thank God we have a president who is passionate about the power sector delivering on its mandate. Once we can consistently invest in the power sector, we don't have policy disruptions, you can be very sure that in no time there will be greater stability in our sector. In no time in the power sector.
Interesting. You made mention of the Electricity Act 2023, and many Nigerians are hoping that their states are able to jump on this and find ways to power or generate electricity for themselves. Do you think that that's going to take away the load on distribution and even transmission? To see that if states are able to generate electricity for themselves, it takes away the burden of the national grid. What are your thoughts in that direction?
Now, in terms of whether it will take away burden or not, I think you see the thing with electricity is, especially for our environment where we can speak about inadequacy of availability of power. For now, and I dare say that for the next 10, 20, almost 30 years, the more load that is available, the more people want to consume, because by so doing, we will remove generator from the economy. You and I will not depend on generator again as an alternative power supply. So for me, what we are likely to see is a more robust transmission that will provide service in each of the 36 states. Don't forget that depending on the voltage level at which the states are going to operate, they will definitely need transmission stations. And transmission station is scattered all over the country. In Abuja, for instance, Abuja is the region. I think there are about 8 regions all over the country. Benin is a region, Lagos is a region, Kaduna is a region, Bauchi is a region, Port Harcourt is a region, and all over the country like that. So what it means is that in each of these regions, the projects are in the process of being executed, and they are being executed as they come along in the hands of professionals, in the hands of experienced contractors who know exactly what to do with this project.
Okay, let's look at the distribution system in the country. The radial, the parallel ring, and all of that. What is because during the research for this show, I got to I stumbled on all of this with your direction, and I'm grateful that I've been able to see this, because it seems like a lot of us, a lot of us naturally do not know what goes on in that sector. We don't even know what it is and why we experience some of the failures that we're experiencing. Let's talk about what system is Nigeria's distribution built on. What model have we built our distribution on? Is it the radial? Is it the ring distribution system? And which is most suitable for us?
Well, I can tell you for free that the ring system is more suitable. But let me quickly correct that information. There are 10 regions all over the country. It's important that we quickly correct that information. Not 8 regions. There are 10 regions all over the country. And as of yesterday, transmission was able to win up to 5,000 megawatts. I think it's important that we state that. But in terms of whether radial or ring system, the ring system is a lot more advantageous to us. Why is it advantageous? Because we can backfeed any location where there is a problem.
Okay, so just hold that thought. Help us understand what is the ring system first of all, so that we understand. We are able to follow through with your explanation.
The ring system is just what it is. You know, when you go for marriage, they will tell you that the ring is a symbol of the perfect love. Everything goes round. There is no breaking point. Okay, so I'm using that so that I can use an expression that is commonly seen. So the ring system is just what it is. A ring. You can backfeed. So if there is problem if Abuja is on potential, by which I mean that there is electricity in Abuja, and the next region has a challenge, you can backfeed from Abuja if the source is not Abuja. That's just the simple meaning. So in the country today, there are 10 regions, and we operate more of a ring system. For instance, when there was lots of supply in Sokoto has to be backfed from another direction, so that Sokoto is not completely kept out of power supply. So the radial line, the radial system is almost like a single line, and when there is any problem on a single line, everybody on that line is out of power supply. But when you have a ring system, you can always backfeed from another source, so that at least for the load that is available, some people are still able to have electricity, and when the full load becomes available, you can take everybody at the same time. That's what the radial and the ring system does in the power sector.
Okay, so there's the new projects that you know, like you mentioned, the 25,000 megawatts transmission capacity, that was built, and all of that. We are worried, or we're wondering if, you know, there's a time frame to all of these issues or these problems going away. You mentioned 21 projects by the TCN. How soon will all of these projects come together to solve the power outage issue in Nigeria? Because that's the biggest problem for the average Nigerian. In spite of the fact that, you know, some of us complain that we pay too much for electricity. The immediate problem is that we have, you know, the power problem solved, because businesses are collapsing on account of buying diesel to run their generators and all of that. How soon do you think that all of this can come together to solve Nigeria's power problem?
Now, in terms of time, that may be a bit difficult to say, because if we have suffered a considerable amount of neglect for a long time, and power sector investment requires patient capital, then you want to say that we need to be patient. But given what the transmission company of Nigeria is doing, what we can only ask for is that there is also a replication from the other legs of the tripod. I know that, generation is also doing so much. I know that transmission is out there. As a matter of fact, I wish this is television and I have the opportunity. I will show you a booklet that they have produced. How many pages now? About 55-page booklet detailing the projects that have been slated for execution, the ones that have been executed and the ones that are being slated for execution. Like I told you, in Lagos, for instance, you have 30 projects in the pipeline. These are not projects you can do within 6 months or 1 year. They are projects that go through several phases, and you take them as they come. Hoping and believing that these projects will be funded as at when due, and there will be not so much distortion in the economy in such a way that it will now hamper the project. Otherwise, I can assure you that these projects will be executed. And these projects take between an average of 2 to 4 years. So if it is 2 years, you are looking at the half road into this administration. If it is 4 years, you are looking at the entire period of an administration. So that is the way these projects work. they may not happen at the speed of light, because it is not distribution where you can install a transformer within a week. No, in distribution you can install a transformer within a week. If the fund is there, the only thing that will delay it is, okay, you want to allow the transformer to be under soak. That's the technical language. You want to allow the transformer to take the, to run a test for some time, and then you begin to peak load. Otherwise, with transmission, the projects don't come quite easy. So let's hope that gradually we will be scaling the hurdles. Gradually we'll be scaling the hurdles. As the projects get commissioned, as the projects get executed, we continue to enjoy greater stability. But it is very important to stress this fact. Transmission may be doing its own. A father may be running around to look for money to send the child to school. The child must also be ready to be in school. What am I trying to say? Generation is improving their own. Transmission is also running the race. At the end of it, there must be availability for consumption. If there is no availability for consumption, of course, it is good that you develop all of those infrastructure. But at the end of it, as we're taught in secondary school, the purpose of production is consumption. If consumption does not take place, then production is also, it's also hampered at the end of the day.
Well, very, very. Thank you very much for that elaborate explanation there. And even though I'm guessing that a lot of Nigerians now may understand what it takes and how long it may take. They have an idea of what it might take to fix this problem. But then let's talk about. I would want us to touch on something that's very particular, very important to most Nigerians. The electricity tariffs. And the review that they see, sometimes even unannounced, the review of electricity tariffs upward. We know we have the mighty multi-year tariff order, and all. But then Nigerians do not understand how they can buy units for this amount, some units for this amount in this month, and the next time they go back to buy, the prices have changed, or the quantity of units that they get is different. Well, how does this happen, and why is it happening?
The issue of tariffs, let me first of all say that it has nothing to do with, it is not a transmission function. Mm-hmm. It's important that we state it clearly that tariff is not a transmission function. However, transmission benefits from the tariff as well, because transmission is part of the market players, it's part of the market participants. Okay? Tariff is purely a NEC responsibility. NEC is the regulator in the sector, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission. NEC is supposed to work with the market players and then come up with a tariff that can benefit the entire sector, the entire market. The generator, who is also servicing the gas supplier, okay, and then transmission, for it to be able to provide equipment, transformers, lines, switch gears, so many other things to be able to transport the electricity to the distributor. The distributor will need transformers, we will need lines, we will need so many others. So what the tariff does is that it provides, if it is able to provide sufficiently for everybody, it provides for everybody so that everybody is a beneficiary of the tariff in the sector. Now, in terms of the review of the tariff, like I said, is a NEC responsibility. It's purely a NEC thing. Transmission is only a market participant, and it is an onlooker in this in the usual tariff review. When it comes to tariff review, there are certain factors that are taken into consideration. One of them is the cost of the dollar at any point in time, and we know what the dollar is today. Another one is, of course, the inflation rate in the market, and we know what the inflation rate is today in the country. As a matter of fact, there are indications that Nigeria has about the highest inflation rate in the world today. So those two factors are very, very essential when you are determining the tariff. Now, ordinarily, the information about tariff is supposed to be communicated. It's supposed to be communicated to customers. when there is a tariff review. Now, when there is a tariff review, depending on whether it is a major tariff review or minor tariff review, the customer is supposed to be informed that, okay, there has been a tariff review. So, again, that is purely for the discos to do. Transmission does not talk about tariff. It's not their business. They can only use it as an explanation, but it's not their responsibility to come out to the open space and say, oh, there has been a tariff review. No, that's not their responsibility. They have more than enough responsibility managing the lines, whether from the independent system or system operator, or whether from the transmission service provider angle of it. The transmission service provider is one that manages all the fixed assets, all those lines that run through the bushes, the high towers, the substations, and things like that. The ISO, which you call the independent system operator, is the one that deals with the allocation of load. It manages the load and all of those intangible things that are in the power. So the point I'm trying to make is that when it comes to tariff review, that's the disco and NEC issue. I mean, discos deal with all of those words. If you see any change in your rate, it is the discos you go to ask them for explanation on what has led to that increase. But in terms of whether there will be increase or not, I have told you that there are certain factors that are taken into consideration. And one of them is the cost of the dollar. One of them is the inflation rate in the country. And these two factors, will agree with me, they have altered substantially what the tariff structure is or ought to be.
Well said. We'll bring in our callers shortly. Those who have been listening, if they have questions or comments to make to this conversation, it would be good to have them in shortly. Stay with us. The conversation continues. My guest has been Mr. Bode Fadigbe, who is the CEO. Sage Consulting and Communications. He's a legal practitioner and communications specialist with a focus on the power sector analysis, advocacy, advisory, and more. Stay with us. We'll be talking more.
Eagles 102.3 Abuja.
Yanga Lotto don't come. Come chop better prices every day with only 100 naira. I know they want you. Every day, people get chance to win bone straight hair, iPhones, Samsung phone unko, iPad, laptops, TV, and many orishi them for 100 naira in Kechi where you day. Yet Sunday, where that's your 100 naira change. Oga Yanga don't come. Yanga Lotto don't land with just 100 naira. If it be you, play Yanga Lotto today. Yanga Lotto, do Yanga.
Oga Yanga, madam, make we do the Yanga. Like say we jump in Maka, brother, waiting with the matter. Won't you make it Yanga? Yanga Lotto, Yanga Lotto, which come choppy.
Has anyone told you you can talk about your business on radio for just 15,000 naira? Get a chance to talk your business for 25 minutes on The Entrepreneur. Mondays to Fridays, 3 p.m. on Eagles 102.3 FM, Abuja. For more inquiries, call 090-9984-4433. 090-9984-4433. The Entrepreneur. Talk your business for just 15,000 naira. Hurry now.
Thank you for staying with us. The conversation continues now. Let's bring you in. Join the conversation. Call 090-7353-0044 and 090-8766-8888. Those are the numbers to call. Again, 090-7353-0044 and 090-8766-8888. You can send SMS and WhatsApp messages to 090-9705-4450. I'm sure that you must have learned a thing or two this morning, because it's more of an expository one that exposes you to a lot of things that you do not know in the power sector. Join in and let's get talking with my guest, Mr. Bode Fadigbe. Let's talk about the supervisory control and data acquisition system and how it works for our own system? Have we been able to, manage that system well, to see that we have the right data as to what's going on the grid in real time, so that we're able to really factor where the problems are and what we need to do better? How does this work? Help us understand the SCADA system.
Now, the SCADA system is one very, very interesting facility in the power sector that you find out that without it, it's almost like flying blind. I mean, like you rightly said, the SCADA system is a supervisory control and data acquisition system. And what does it do essentially? What is the purpose? Now, the purpose is for it to be able to pick up information, gather data in real time. The SCADA is made up of equipment and software, that is used for gathering data in real time from all locations of the transmission network in order to control equipment and to know exactly the condition of the entire network. That's exactly what it does. So it picks information and make it available for use at any point in time. So if, for instance, there is a generating station where maybe a challenge is coming from them, it can see it almost, immediately, in real time. It's not almost immediately, it's real-time acquisition of data. So, and a network as big as our own cannot do without a SCADA. It cannot do without it. And luckily enough, transmission has that, although they are still improving on it, but it's totally different from a situation where you have zero SCADA availability. What transmission is doing now as a result of growth in the network is also to expand the SCADA network through the rehabilitation of the SCADA, such that it can now accommodate and cater for the entire grid. For instance, I know very clearly that contracts have been awarded to a company. If you don't mind, if I can mention their name, maybe for advert reasons, I may not mention their name, but I can tell you that contracts have been awarded and work is going on it. As at 25th of August last year, all of those ones had been completed through international bidding process, and the World Bank is providing a lot of support for all of these projects, so that our power sector can be such that it can have all of the necessary equipment that is required to keep it going and to make it perform at optimal level. So that SCADA is an equipment that you cannot do without. And I can tell you for free that project has been completed up to 41%, and they are going ahead to bring it up to optimal level. So that's what is going on.
Well, if transmission is doing this, do we also have it replicated with generation and distribution? Because the times when, for instance, with distribution, I'm going to be focusing on distribution for a bit. There's a power outage in so and so area. Can we readily tell that the people at the control stations know that, or know that there's a power outage and this is the reason for that outage?
Based on my experience in the distribution sector, I know that before I left, at least, speaking about Abuja, for instance, I know that Abuja installed, using Internet of Things, they installed some equipment on their line, so that when there is a tripping, they can readily narrow down to where the fault is and respond very quickly, instead of doing a manual tracing system. Manual tracing means that at times you have to go from pole to pole, climb the pole, look at the condition of the insulator. Is it a cracked insulator that is causing the line to trip? Because when there is the slightest crack on the insulator is that brown porcelain material on the pole that the wire is sitting upon. When there is a little crack on that equipment, the line will never stay. So I know that Abuja Electricity was doing that. I wouldn't know what the situation is. I've left there, for a while now. But I trust that every reasonable disco will find a way of monitoring its HT line. When there is a tripping on an HT line, there is no way you won't know. Whether it is transient fault, whether it is head fault, whether it's long distance relay, or whatever indication that there is a tripping. Because there is a panel, there is a control room where there is a monitoring. However, and this is where I think your question is trying to address, at your cottage level, at your neighborhood level, unless you go and report physically, either by telephone or you go there physically, you won't, the station may not, the local station may not know that there has been a fault. In the local transformer, there is a blown fuse, there is a burnt cable and things like that. Unless they go on patrol, which is what they are supposed to do. There's supposed to be a maintenance roster where they will go from substation to substation to see the condition. They are supposed to do what is called load reading to determine, just as you are advised at certain age to look at your BP almost every morning. I think medical science says that once you are about 40 and above, you must check your BP regularly. That is the same way they are supposed to go to the station.
All right, Mr. Fadipe, let's bring in
at any point in time.
Well said. Let's bring in this caller. This caller has been on the line. Good morning.
Good morning, my friends. God bless you.
Good morning. You're welcome.
Yes, good morning to your guest. My name is Kundu. Thank you. I'm from local government, national.
Let's hear you.
Yes, my prince, you see, the issue of power sector, my prince, we Nigerians, we are now confused. I want to ask your guest, is it possible for the power sector to work? Because if there is any sector that have refused to work after injecting billions of dollars, it's the power sector. I remember former President Olusegun Obasanjo injected billions of dollars, and still we're talking about power sector today, and refused to work. I also want to ask your guest, why is it that some African countries that Nigeria have managed to keep them like they have a special supply, but we cannot enjoy power supply. Power supply. Because at this point in time, it has refused to work. It seems there are some evil spirits in the power sector that will never allow it to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that one. I guess taking that down. Hello, good morning. Let's bring in another caller. Hello.
Good morning, my dear brother Hannah. So this is Alamin.
Alamin, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, I greet our guest, Mr. Fadipe. Good morning, sir. Quick one, I have a quick question. I just want Mr. Fadipe to please elucidate more on the cement project, the cement power project, on, the potential that it has, that it will have an impact on our energy sector, and also the Ugeru power plant. I think when completed, it will be about 700 megawatts. I think it will be the largest in Nigeria. There's also another one ongoing in Kano State. If all of this come on board, what impact will it have on our power generating capacity? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alamin. Let's get back with Mr. Fadipe. I'm guessing that you got the questions. Hundu saying, is it possible for Nigeria's power sector to work? Because he sees that there are countries that Nigeria feeds, and those countries kind of have a bit of stability when it comes to power, while the country that generates and feed those countries does not have stable electricity. He goes, Alamin is also asking and saying, what is going on with the Siemens projects? Do you know what level it is at the moment, and what is the benefit, and how much would it benefit Nigerians if it comes on stream?
I wish I have all the time to respond to all these questions.
Unfortunately, we don't have so much time on our hands.
I'm also about entering into a meeting now that is stated for 10 o'clock. But let me just quickly say that it is possible to have a functional power sector. And transmission has demonstrated that by making sure that for over 400 days, we didn't have an interruption. So it's possible to have a functional power sector. What we just need is consistent investment and going ahead to do those things that we have planned to do. I mean, the Siemens project is also going on side by side. So for me, let's not be pessimistic, rather let's be optimistic that this power sector will work. And we are taking a good example from the transmission section. I mean, for instance, capital investment is one of the things that determines tariff. If we slow down on capital investment, that will affect us. I mean, look at all that we have said transmission is doing. That's a whole lot of capital investment. So that's and that's why I said the power sector requires patient capital. Where is the money going to come from? Look at the state of our economy today. I mean, it's a thing that gives us a lot of cause for concern. But let's not be pessimistic. Let's be optimistic, and I'm sure that things will work out. One of the things that can also give us a functional power sector is the maintenance level, which is one of the things that also helps the transmission company of Nigeria to maintain the grid for over 400 days. It has been no maintenance. I mean, it will collapse at the slightest opportunity. But because of their own maintenance culture and putting a lot of premium on maintenance, that has also helped the grid to stabilize. And I'm sure that going forward, that will also be part of their culture.
Alamin also mentioned the Zungeri hydropower project. What is the situation with that? And is the federal government handling that project, or has it been also privatized? Because we know that generation has mostly been privatized.
No, Zungeri it has been brought in. That's why about 2 days, I mean, you could read yesterday of the increase in capacity to 14,000 megawatts. But if there is no off-taker, it's useless running your machine because you are running your machines at a cost. So there has to be an off-taker. And that off-taker is at the tail end of the value chain. There has to be an off-taker. If there is no off-taker, it's useless running your machine because you have to make sure that you maintain so many things are involved. So
one quick question. Do we need federal government to prevail on distributors to scale up their capacity to be able to take up more electricity, as supplied from generation and transmission?
There are so many issues attached to it which we may not be able to deal with now. But suffice it to say that is one area that requires greater attention.
All right, well said. Thank you so much. I will have to let you go now. Our clock is in the ceiling. Mr. Bode Fadigbe is the CEO, Sage Consulting and Communications, a legal practitioner and communication specialist with a focus on the power sector analysis, advocacy, advisory, and all. He's also a partner with the electricity market participants. Thank you so much for talking with us, Mr. Fadigbe. It's a pleasure, always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much for having me. My greatest delight this morning.
Have a pleasant day. And well, thank you so much to everyone who's been a part of the conversation this morning. I'm sure you took something away from that conversation with Mr. Bode Fadigbe. We'll be talking more about several other sectors of the economy and how we can get it better. That's where, we need to look for ways to keep the country moving. If power is solved, many businesses would survive today. I mean, today Nigerian businesses are suffering. MSMEs suffering because of power. If we're able to fix that sector, just maybe the economy can get better. My name is Iheanacho Prince. Keep it with us on your radio experience. You can count on